From April Fool's Day to a new school year, pranks can be a fun way to bond with friends and tease rivals just a little. But what happens when private jokes become public shame? Our next guest enjoys a good inside gag, but she also knows what can happen when a prank stops being funny and starts being illegal. Let's welcome attorney and mom of two. We have Ramona Morgan. Hey, Ramona.
Hi, Desiree. It's great to be here.
Great to have you. Okay, Ramona, I understand that for a serious lawyer, you have a good sense of humor. So what made you want to talk about the topic of pranks?
Pranks are near and dear to my heart. I have such a history with pranks. I always loved pranks. Back in boarding school, we would raid the boys' dorms. We would do all sorts of things, steal sneakers. And looking back, we were really probably racking up what could have been felonies. And that's a good rule of thumb with pranks. It's sort of how the prank will be received is a big measure of the impact it's going to have on you and your life going forward.
Yeah, and you're going to help us kind of find that balance because I see pranks all the time, especially now with social media. You'll see the pranks and you kind of see people commenting, oh, that's really funny, or hey, I think that was a step too far. So what kind of pranks have led to real lawsuits or even arrests?
Right. So if you have something like a glitter bomb, it might seem like fun, but it causes a lot of damage because it has to be cleaned up. Or if you do anything where you contact law enforcement and it incurs costs for the municipality where they have to send out police officers or emergency medical response team or something like that, then again, that will definitely be considered as crossing the line. If you do something that causes emotional distress or trauma to an individual, that's when you go past the line of having an ordinary prank and where you could really have some legal implications for what you've done.
Okay, and so the prankster, maybe they find it funny, but the person being pranked doesn't. Can someone sue for emotional distress after a prank?
You know, Absolutely. If you've caused trauma, emotional distress, fear, these things are going to be factors in whether or not a person can sue. And Desiree, it's great that you mentioned social media because once that gets rebroadcast to millions of people, then the impact of your actions is that much greater. So when you do rebroadcast things, it increases the likelihood that you will be sued, and it'll increase the likelihood that there'll be damages that are found and that are won by the person who is impacted.
And what would you say, what's your advice, Ramona, for keeping pranks fun, but keeping them out of the court?
Yeah, you have to really look at it from a reasonable person's perspective. And that's the standard that's going to come up if you ever wind up in court for it. So you have to make sure that the person was truly in on the joke. And you have to make sure that you didn't cross that line in terms of humiliation and fear. And you always want to make sure that you're on the right side of that line. If you have their consent to a joke, that's of course fine. But you really have to make sure that they're participating and not just being made fun of.
And are you kind of running on the side of safety? Let's say you're doing a prank or a joke. Is it better to maybe do these pranks or jokes with people you know rather than strangers? Because again, going back to social media, you see people who are walking and they're being pranked on and they don't know the person that's pranking them. Should we kind of be safe on who we
Right.
choose to prank?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I started off kind of with a little bit of an anecdote about boarding school, and in that instance, we were part of a community. It was like
Yeah.
friends to friends. There was a sort of ongoing, what we considered a traditional annual raid that we would do. So it really should be within your community or people you know, and then also don't always buy what you see on social media. Very often, those pranks are staged, and so you
Yes.
either have an actor or another person from the team of the person doing the content. So it really isn't always a stranger to stranger interaction. So don't be fooled and make sure you're being savvy, especially if you want to broadcast it or show it to other people.
Such a good point about those social media pranks being staged. That's such a good point. Okay, and
Often, right?
we know how to have some fun here in Sacktown, but are there local laws that we need to be mindful of here?
Yeah, so Sacramento has some really good laws about sort of creating a public disturbance or other things that might happen in connection with a prank. And California is always on the forefront of a lot of laws that protect the peace. So if you're going to do something that causes a disturbance, whether it's noise or some other sort of commotion, very easily you could wind up on the other side of a misdemeanor. They won't rise to the level of a felony, but it's still something you to be mindful of.
All right, so we want to keep it fun, but keep it safe as well. Ramona, thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Desiree. Always a pleasure.
Of course. Okay, to our viewers, nobody wants to explain a prank to a judge. For tips on how to keep your moves on the right side of the law, head to RamonaMorgan.com.